Why are Mom's bones here? My 4-year-old niece Jazelle looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. She had been left in our care after my sister Ashley went missing. As soon as Jazelle arrived at the house, she pointed to the garden and uttered those chilling words. A shiver ran down my spine. What could it be? I whispered, fear gripping my heart. That sister is here? Jazelle possessed a mysterious power, a sixth sense that had proven true time and time again. Having witnessed it multiple times, I felt the blood drain from my face as my niece spoke. Her words struck a chord of dread within me. Driven by a mixture of apprehension and desperate hope, I started digging in the direction she pointed. From there, one after another, I found my sister's belongings. A familiar hair clip, a button from her favorite jacket, a worn leather bracelet. Each item unearthed sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. What the hell is this all about? I muttered, my hands trembling as I dug deeper. And then I found it. A letter addressed to me with a postage stamp, buried alongside a canvas bag containing more of Ashley's things. When I discovered the truth hidden within that letter, I couldn't stop shaking with fear and anger. It was a message from Ashley, a plea for help disguised as a casual note. It spoke of her suspicions, her fear that someone was following her, watching her, and it named my husband Ciaran as the person she feared most. Ciaran, my husband of 2 years, was 5 years my senior. We had been colleagues working for the same internet company. He was my mentor, a rising star, and I admired his dedication and drive. When I first introduced him to my parents after we got married, he was taken aback. My father was the president of the company we worked for, a fact I had never disclosed. My father, who already held Ciaran in high regard for his work ethic, was happy to give his blessing. We were married with the well wishes of everyone around us, and I was truly happy. I resigned from my job through early retirement to become a full-time housewife, dedicating myself to supporting my husband's burgeoning career. I'll work harder too, so you should support me too, Paul, he had declared, and I poured my heart into making our home a haven for him. Perhaps it was my father's influence, recognizing Ciaran's potential and publicly announcing him as a candidate for the next president, that changed things. Ciaran started coming home late, his demeanor shifting, becoming distant and irritable. "Did you take this Saturday off properly?" I asked one evening, confused by his dismissive attitude. "What? Why? Hi, what's wrong?" he responded, his voice laced with annoyance. "I told you we were invited to a friend's wedding as a couple," I reminded him, hurt by his disinterest. What? Was I right? No matter what I said, he seemed distracted, lost in his thoughts. At times he was tense and withdrawn, snapping at me over trivial matters. "How's your work going? Is it as hard as ever?" I ventured one day, hoping to bridge the growing chasm between us. "Oh, you're so annoying all the time. It's none of your business," he suddenly roared, hurling a box of tissues at the wall. It hit me by mistake. "Ouch!" I cried out, clutching my arm. Ciaran merely glanced at me sideways, offering no apology, and left the room. This was not the man I had married, the man who was always kind, patient, and considerate. Maybe he's under pressure from work, I reasoned with myself. It was true that the pressure on him, as a potential successor, was immense. I tried to convince myself that this was just a temporary phase and that things would eventually return to normal. Then, one day, my parents called, saying they were bringing over some good wine and meat they had received. I had expected only my mother to come, but my father accompanied her as well. "Ah, Ciaran hasn't come home yet?" my father remarked, a knowing glint in his eye. "Yeah, it looks like he's working late again today, Dad. Please don't push him too hard," I said, forcing a light-hearted tone, masking my growing unease. Okay, I'm not doing that," my father chuckled. "Especially now that there's no big case, everyone seems to be going home on time." "Oh?" I was taken aback. I had assumed Ciaran's late nights were due to his workload. My parents exchanged a look, their expressions a mixture of concern and suspicion. Not wanting to worry them, I quickly fabricated an excuse. "Ah, yes, I forgot that Ciaran recently started going to the gym, saying he was going to work out." I laughed nervously, hoping they wouldn't see through my facade. "Is he possibly having an affair or something?" my mother whispered, her voice laced with worry. Behind my forced smile, my anxiety spiraled. My suspicions about Ciaran grew with each passing day. That evening, I decided to check up on him. While he was in the bath, I looked through both his phone and his company phone. There were no unusual call logs and no suspicious messages. Maybe it was just my imagination, I tried to convince myself. But the doubt lingered, gnawing at my peace of mind. Just in case, I set up a GPS tracking app on his company phone, one that I could monitor from my device. The next day, I decided to confide in my older sister, Ashley. "You know, I think my husband might be having an affair," I confessed, my voice trembling. "Siren, it doesn't seem like he's the type who would do something like that," Ashley said, her tone reassuring. "But, well, if he's cheating on you, you should thoroughly punish him. I'll help you," she added with a laugh, her usual lightheartedness returning. Ashley had always been my rock, my confidant. Even after getting married and becoming a mother, she remained true to herself, never shying away from expressing her opinions. She had a unique sense of style, favoring punk rock attire, leather jackets, skull motif accessories. She wore them with confidence, even to her daughter's nursery school meetings. "I might stand out," she would say with a mischievous grin, but she never wavered, never conformed to societal expectations. I admired her for it. "Isn't my mom cool?" Jazelle would proudly declare to her friends, and I knew Ashley's unconventionality had rubbed off on her daughter. As our conversation about Siren's alleged affair ended, Ashley's expression turned serious. "Come to think of it, lately, on my way home from work, I feel like someone is following me," she said, her voice hushed. "A stalker? Does your husband know? Shouldn't you talk to the police about that?" I was immediately concerned. "But, well, no one would attack such a flamboyant, strong-looking woman," she said with a dismissive laugh, her usual carefree demeanor returning. Despite her attempt to brush it off, I couldn't shake off the worry that settled in my heart. 2 months passed since that conversation. Ashley, who used to bring Jazelle to visit every holiday, had suddenly stopped. "Haven't seen you recently. How are you? Are you busy?" I texted her, my concern growing with each passing day. Things have been going on. I'll come visit you when things settle down again," she replied, her response unusually vague. While she still responded to my messages, there was a noticeable shift in her tone, a sense of evasiveness that was unlike her. "Let's visit Sister's house next Sunday," I decided, determined to see her and make sure she was all right. On Friday night, as I sat reading in the living room, a clattering noise from the garden startled me. Siren hadn't come home yet, and feeling uneasy, I peeked through the gap in the curtains. My heart skipped a beat. There in the dim moonlight was Siren, digging furiously in the soil with a shovel. Relief washed over me knowing it was him, but it was quickly replaced by confusion. Why was he digging in the garden at this late hour, especially when he hadn't even entered the house yet? "You, what are you doing there?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Oh, no. I was thinking of planting some flowers here," he said, his voice strained, his movements jerky. "At this late hour of the night? Then I'll do it in the daytime. You don't have to. Anyway, don't touch this place," he shouted, his tone suddenly harsh and menacing. "Don't talk like that," I retorted, taken aback by his outburst. "Oh, I'm sorry, but I just want to do it." "It's okay," he mumbled, hastily filling the hole he had dug. His eyes darted around nervously, and he rushed into his room without another word. I wonder if he is so stressed out that he wants to tinker in the garden, I thought to myself, trying to rationalize his bizarre behavior. Siren must have been preoccupied with something, I reasoned, choosing not to confront him about it. But the eerie feeling persisted, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. The next morning, I received a call from my brother-in-law, Richie. He rarely contacted me directly, so I knew something was wrong. My hand trembled as I answered the phone. "Ashley didn't come back without contacting me. I tried calling her many times, but I couldn't connect with her." Richie's voice was frantic, edged with panic. I felt a chill run down my spine. I immediately tried calling Ashley myself, but the call went straight to voicemail. When I told Siren about it, he said that he and Richie would try to find places where she might have gone. And so, my niece Jazelle was left in my care. "What should we do for fun? How about going for a walk?" I tried my best to shield Jazelle from the worry and fear that gnawed at me. I put on a cheerful facade, treating her as I normally would, but then as we walked towards the garden, Jazelle stopped, her gaze fixed on a particular spot. "Why are Mom's bones here?" she asked again, her voice small and filled with a chilling certainty. "Huh? What does that mean?" I was confused, but deep down a part of me knew exactly what she meant. Jazelle's mysterious power was real. My sister and her husband had discovered it when she was around 2 years old, and they had confided in me about it. She would often have premonitions, sensing things before they happened. On the way home from the park, she would talk about a car accident that would happen nearby, or she would pinpoint the location of a lost object. Once, right in front of me, she had accurately described the location of an earring I had lost, one I had searched for everywhere. We had kept her ability a secret, fearing it might be misused by others. But now, facing Jazelle's unwavering gaze, I knew I had to trust her intuition. With a heavy heart, I began digging where she pointed. "This is Mom's bone," Jazelle said, her small hand holding a skull-shaped earring, one of Ashley's favorites. It had been unearthed from the soil, along with more of her belongings. Jazelle's face crumpled and she began to cry. My sister's letter, the one buried in the garden, confirmed my worst fears. It was a message meant for me, a desperate plea for help. "If I suddenly disappear, please suspect Siren," she had written. And as I read those words, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Siren's late nights, his strange behavior, his frantic digging in the garden, it all pointed to him. Fury and terror coursed through me. I knew I had to find Ashley, ensure her safety, and make sure Siren was punished for what he had done. I remembered the GPS tracker I had installed on his phone. It was time to confront him, armed with the truth. I confided in my father, telling him everything. He was furious, heartbroken, and determined to bring Siren to justice. We decided to confront him together, but I asked my father to stay hidden until the right moment. I knew Siren would never confess if he knew my father was present. That evening, with Jazelle safely at my parents' house, I waited for Siren to return. He had sent me a text message about half an hour prior saying, "Ashley hasn't been found yet, so I'm going home once, a little while later." As soon as he entered the living room, he froze, his eyes widening as he saw the items I had arranged on the tabletop. "Wow, what is this?" he shouted, his voice laced with feigned surprise. "Yes, I had arranged the things I had dug out of the soil in the room to see your reaction," I said, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering. "Hey, why is there so much dirt on it? Why is all that junk here in the first place?" he blustered, pretending ignorance, but his eyes darted around nervously, his facade cracking under the weight of his guilt. "This belonged to your sister and was buried in the garden of this house. It was you who did that, wasn't it?" I challenged him, my voice cold and sharp. "Hey, where is your sister? What proof do you have to say that? There's no way I know where Ashley is. What are you talking about?" he stammered, his face paling. "You were messing around in the dirt yesterday. It's obvious that you're involved in this, isn't it?" I pressed, my anger simmering. "What happened in the garden happened yesterday, today. And besides, I was watching you." "So?" he retorted, his voice rising defensively. Did he think he could get away with it? He shut up as if realizing there was no point in denying it any longer. "Well, okay, just read this and you'll know everything." I placed Ashley's letter, the one buried alongside her belongings, in front of him. "A letter? It's the letter your sister was trying to get out for me. This also came out of the ground? There shouldn't have been anything like that," he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. He was unaware of the letter's existence. He hadn't checked that thoroughly when burying Ashley's things. "If I suddenly disappear, please suspect Siren," I read aloud, my voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. "Hey, what does this mean? Does it mean you're sure you had something to do with your sister's disappearance?" "This time I don't know anything about that." "Ashley? What are you talking crazy about, too?" he insisted, his voice cracking, sweat beading on his forehead. "There's more to this. I was persistently followed by Siren," she said. I stared at him, my eyes burning with accusation. "Oh no, no. You were doing something terrible, weren't you? Explain to me what's going on." Siren hung his head as if contemplating his next move. "No, I didn't. What? It wasn't forced. She wanted me. He trailed off, his words incoherent, revealing a twisted truth. He had been infatuated with Ashley, harboring secret feelings for her since the beginning of our marriage. "I also put up with it because I married you in the first place. But Ashley and I get on well together, don't we? We talk a lot. We're even the same age." He rambled, his voice filled with a lovesick longing that sent a wave of disgust through me. "I don't think she meant to talk to you like that. But after all, just having a nice conversation isn't enough, is it?" I spat, my voice dripping with disdain. Ciaran didn't seem to hear me. He was lost in his delusional world, consumed by his obsession with my sister. "I began to want to know more about her," he continued, oblivious to my growing fury. Ciaran, driven by his twisted desire, had started following Ashley home from work, stalking her, lurking in the shadows. "Maybe you weren't busy at work. You were just running late because you were visiting my sister," I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. "Oh yes, well, I don't need to work overtime considering how good I am at my job," he boasted, his arrogance astounding. He seemed to have no remorse, no awareness of the gravity of his actions. Ashley's words echoed in my mind. Someone might be following me. It wasn't her imagination. It was my husband stalking her, terrorizing her. "I questioned Ciaran," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Yes, it was because I was thinking about Ashley, but I'm so annoyed that you're talking to me from the side." "That's terrible," he whined, his concern solely focused on his discomfort. "So why did you—" "About my sister?" I asked, my voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. Ciaran, seemingly unconcerned by my mounting fury, confessed without hesitation. "Ashley found out I was following her, so I decided to send her to the other side." "That's terrible, because she's going to tell you and the boss about it. That would be terrible, wouldn't it?" I was horrified by his casual cruelty. Ciaran leaned back in his chair, chuckling disdainfully. "Well, not just anyone can become the next president. It would be a waste to trip over something like this." He cared only about his ambition and his selfish desires. My sister's life meant nothing to him. And because of that, my sister— "Well, I miscalculated when you dug up the garden and found Ashley's belongings." He looked at me with a flicker of regret, but it was fleeting, replaced by a chilling detachment. "Jazelle told me. She said, 'There are Mama's bones here. She's a creepy little kid.' Well, but now that I know everything about you, I can get rid of you too," he said, his voice cold and menacing. He suddenly stood up, his eyes glinting with a dangerous light, and grabbed my neck with both hands. "Stop it!" At that moment, the door to the living room swung open with a resounding crash. "Stop it! Stop it! Boss, why are you here?" Ciaran's hands loosened their grip, his eyes wide with surprise and fear. I seized the opportunity, breaking free from his grasp and rushing to my father's side. My father's presence had the desired effect. Ciaran was speechless, his face drained of all color. "Let me first say this from a father's point of view. You have hurt my precious daughters, and I will never forgive you. I will report you to the police." My father's voice was low and dangerous, laced with a righteous fury that made Ciaran cower. "I am sorry, sir, I'm sorry." Ciaran prostrated himself on the floor, begging for forgiveness. "This is termination from the position of president, and of course there's no talk about you being the next successor. I had hopes for you, Ciaran, but this is truly disappointing." My father's words were final, a crushing blow to Ciaran's ambitions. "Oh no, please don't do that." Ciaran looked up, his face contorted with desperation. He stood up, pleading with my father, his arrogance replaced by a pathetic groveling. "There's no way I can forgive you." I pushed Ciaran away, my entire being radiating disgust and rejection. "Please ask Dad to do something too. If there's no successor for the company, it'll be over, right? Everyone will be in trouble, won't they?" He clung to me, begging for mercy. "Ending it would be better for the employees than having someone as despicable as you inherit it." I cut him off, my voice cold and sharp. I wanted nothing more to do with him. Despite Ciaran's desperate attempts to salvage the situation, his pleas fell on deaf ears. My father and I exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between us. It was over. Just then my phone rang. It was Richie, my brother-in-law. "Paul, I'm okay," a familiar voice said. It was Ashley. "Ashley, thank God you're alive." Relief washed over me in a tidal wave so powerful that I sank to my knees. "I'm so glad," I cried, tears streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry for worrying you. I'm sorry I didn't tell you because they said they would hurt you too if I told you." It's okay. Thanks to Jazelle for telling me. That child is also waiting for Mom to come home. As it turned out, what Jazelle had referred to as Mom's bones were her favorite skull motif accessories. Seeing them unearthed from the garden had triggered her premonition, leading her to believe her mother was in danger. But Jazelle had also believed with unwavering certainty that her mother was alive, and I, clinging to that hope, had been determined to believe it too. I hung up the phone, my heart soaring with relief and gratitude. I stood up and looked down at Siren, who was staring at me with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. "How the hell did you know where I was? I locked her up where you would never find out. Did you forget that there's a GPS app on the smartphones of all employees provided by the company? When I suspected you of cheating on me once before, I set it up so I could see it on my phone too." I had used his paranoia against him. From the GPS history, I had discovered his frequent visits to an abandoned warehouse far from home. I had shared this information with Richie, who had immediately gone to investigate. "It's good that you didn't harm your sister. It's a relief that you didn't compound the guilt," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Siren, in a final act of defiance, smirked at me. "Well, we finally got some alone time, right? It would be a waste to get rid of it so quickly. But you wouldn't understand this feeling, would you?" His words were laced with a chilling detachment, a complete lack of remorse. Seeing his eerie expression, I was terrified. "I'm sure Ashley was happy to be with me too. You're the worst, you scumbag." I could find no other words to describe the monster standing before me. "The police have already been notified, and they are going to file a damage report. Wait a minute. You don't mind if I get caught, do you? Let's all continue to get along from now on. We're a family, aren't we? Aren't we?" He was delusional, clinging to a reality that no longer existed. "You're the one who caused this whole mess, and yet you have the nerve to say such things? What's wrong with you? It's over between us." I threw the divorce papers I had prepared at him, my voice trembling with anger and disgust. Seeing the finality of my actions, Siren's facade crumbled. "Oh, no," he mumbled, his voice hollow and defeated. The police arrived shortly after, taking Siren away to face charges for his actions. My sister, suffering from emotional distress, demanded compensation from him. I divorced him, severing all ties with the man who had brought so much pain and fear into our lives. Siren, dismissed from his company, lost everything. Ashley, thankfully, was unharmed and in good health. Jazelle was overjoyed to be reunited with her mother, her unwavering faith in her mother's safety vindicated. I returned to work at my father's company, and my heart set on a new goal, to take over the company and ensure that it remained a place of integrity and respect. I had faced my fears, confronted the darkness, and emerged stronger, and I knew with unwavering certainty that I would never let anyone hurt my family again. Let's conclude the story shortly. Siren, blinded by his ambition and twisted desires, lost everything. He was arrested, charged, and ultimately faced the consequences of his actions. My sister Ashley, though shaken by the ordeal, was safe and sound, reunited with her beloved daughter Jazelle. Jazelle's unwavering faith in her mother's well-being, her mysterious power, had proven true once again. As for me, I emerged from the darkness stronger and more determined than ever. I had faced my fears, confronted the monster hiding behind a mask of charm, and protected my family. The divorce was finalized, severing all ties with Siren. I returned to the company, my father's company, not as a housewife but as a leader, ready to take on the challenges ahead. My goal was clear: to honor my sister's strength, nurture Jazelle's extraordinary gift, and build a future where such darkness could never take root again. The company, cleansed of Siren's corrupting influence, was poised for a new era, one built on integrity, respect, and unwavering family bonds. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs. gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.